was at the fourth of these sessions that the council enacted the union of West and East, with a profession of faith of the Greeks and a dogmatic constitution concerning the procession of the Holy Spirit. So the union is made, and the representatives of the Greeks seem more than happy to proclaim their belief in what we call the filioque. In the Creed, we say that the Holy Spirit proceeds from both the Father and the Son. Right? So the Father and the Son are one in the procession of the Holy Spirit. This is precisely a part of the Creed that the Greeks disputed, and so for them to make this profession was really quite remarkable. And yet, once the Greek clergy returned to Constantinople, and Michael VIII attempted to proclaim this unity, the whole of the Eastern world revolted against the council. It was apparent that the union appears to have been imposed by the emperor, Michael VIII. And so the majority of the Greek clergy were opposed to the union from the very beginning. And the local clergy resisted it. And so, consequently, the union, which was achieved on paper at the council, was never achieved in fact back home. This illustrates to us the importance of what happens after a council. It is not enough that a council should enact its decrees, but it is almost just as important, and perhaps even more important, that the decrees of that council be enacted after the council is over with, that somebody goes to the trouble of actually finding ways to implant these decrees within the life of the local church. The weakness of this union with the Greeks renders the whole notion of crusade impossible. Gregory X won approval for heavy taxation for his crusade during the council. And the council merely decided to engage in the crusade. No start was made, and so the project, in all of its grandeur, came to absolutely nothing. Gregory X died soon after the council and was not sufficiently influential or powerful enough to bring to a conclusion his plans for the church and the state and their involvement in the crusade. As for the reform of the church, probably one of the most important parts of this council is that this is the first time that it's decreed that the Pope should be elected by the College of Cardinals assembled in conclave. Previous to this, the Pope would be elected by the clergy and nobility of the city of Rome, which could amount to chaos. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons why Gregory attempts to get this in place is because his own election took just over 2 years. Can you imagine a world that relies so much, particularly in the High Middle Ages, that relies so much on papal administration, to have a vacant see for at least 2 years? A number of the other constitutions are familiar from the constitution of the first Lateran Council, that some of the constitutions treat on usury. Usury, because both the first Council of Lyon and the second Council of Lyon were worried about the corrosive influence of debt on churches, on local churches. So to have these churches with a huge burden of debt was a tremendous danger that they wished to remediate and avoid, particularly in a church that proclaims itself not to believe in usury and the lending of money at interest. So there were some other particular questions about the reform of morals and the reform of the church as well. Clerical morals as well as institutions within the church. So most of the major aims of the council were not met. Probably the most important thing for the future of the church that came out of this council is the whole structure set up for the election of Pope. Are there any questions about the Second Lateran Council?
Who did you say elected the Pope before this time?
So it would be the clergy and the local nobility of Rome.
Who was Michael VIII?
Michael VIII was a descendant of the emperors of Constantinople, who had that family had been pushed out by the Latin invasion of Constantinople.
Was he the Holy Roman Emperor then?
He was the emperor of the Eastern Empire, the Oriental Empire. So he's the emperor of Constantinople. He took back Constantinople for the Greeks, and so won it back. Won back the city of Constantinople for the East. So, he's sometimes called Paleologus.
I was just wondering out of curiosity, if Thomas Aquinas died on the way there, was he like just people with him stopping travels, taking back, or he didn't die in war or nothing, in natural causes or something?
He died of natural causes. He was on his way to the council with his associates or companion.
They just take him back to his homeland?
Reginald. He was on his way, and he stayed at a monastery. He apparently fell off his horse. Either fell off his horse or had an accident along the way, and struck his head. So there's some concern about his health. They brought him to a Cistercian monastery called Fossa Nova, which you can still see. It's still intact. And you can actually go to the room where they laid him out. He stayed with them for some time, enough time in order to dictate a brief work I forget, it was a commentary, I believe. I forget which work it was. But dictate a work to Reginald his Socius, just before he died. He died at the monastery. And of course, his reputation for sanctity was already great. So the monks, in order to preserve the body, I hope nobody's eating. The monks, in order to preserve the body, and this would have been common, boiled the body. Okay, and then they temporarily buried the body in the chapel of the monastery. Chapel, which is really a huge church.
So in other words, he's laid there to rest.
He was laid there to rest, but then in the 14th century, when he's canonized, I believe it's the master of the order at the time, negotiates the return of Thomas Aquinas' body. And I believe it's in Lyon right now. I'm not absolutely positive about that, but I think it's
You're doing pretty good.
Okay.
That's a great follow-up.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
What language do the Greeks use about the relationship between Christ and the Holy Spirit that's different?
They would claim that this phrase filioque, which is a Latin phrase,